Welcome to another episode of Video Store Rejects. This is a podcast where we discuss directors' filmographies and our favorite film franchises. I am your host, Cody House. With me is my co host, Chris Jacobs.
How's it going, guys?
Today we are going back into Ridley Scott's filmography. And today we have a returning guest who asked about this movie. We didn't have a guest at the time. He's an associate professor of English at Siena Heights University. It's Dr. Mark Bernard. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, thanks, Cody. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate your invitation back, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this movie. Really, I'm pumped.
Of course, yeah.
I'm glad. I mean, I kind of wasn't surprised you wanted to talk about this one because I know horror is kind of your wheelhouse. I was shocked that you're a fan of this because I know popular opinion is this isn't a good movie, and some people would even say it's not a good book because they don't like the direction the story goes in.
Oh no, I enjoyed this movie.
I think this movie had an uphill battle no matter how good or bad people think it is because it had to follow Silence of the Lambs, which is like a crowning jewel of filmmaking, not just for the horror genre, but just in movies, period.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that. Well, I suppose we'll probably talk about this more, but after the novel came out and it got the reception that it did, and then Jonathan Demme saw the novel and he's like, "Yo, I'm off this. Like, I am not doing this." And then Jodie Foster read it and she's like, "That's not Clarice Starling would never ever do that." So there's no way in hell I'm going to be in this movie. Yeah, you talk about an uphill battle. I was surprised at the time, and I don't want to get too far into it, but I was surprised at the time that Ridley Scott like swooped in as quickly as he did. But I mean, he's like, "I'll do it," I don't care, because he obviously saw the value in the material. So yeah, this movie had a tough go of it at the time, and it is fun though to compare it to Silence of the Lambs and to kind of jump back and forth that way. But yeah, you're right, Cody. I just wanted to underscore that this movie did not come into didn't have a welcoming reception.
Yeah, I mean, the book was popular, of course, because people wanted to read it as an anticipated sequel. And, I think it got greenlit for a movie even before the book like hit the stands because I think Thomas Harris sent manuscripts to Jonathan Demme, Anthony Hopkins, Jodie Foster, and I think even Ted Talley, who wrote the script for Silence. And of course, 3 out of the 4 didn't want to tackle it because one, they didn't like the ending of the story, but they also just didn't like the book, I guess, because it was a lot more gory and grotesque and not as much of a psychological thriller as Silence of the Lambs was.
I mean, I thought it was kind of a natural progression. Like it seemed like where that would go. Now, I confession time. I have not read the book. I'm just going off of the movie here, but the series. But
Okay.
I mean,
Do you want us to spoil it? It's not in the movie, so that's kind of funny
well,
that all these people who
I mean,
turned
if I
the
haven't read the book
movie
by now,
down,
yeah.
they ended up changing the ending because in the book, Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling start making out, and they're both eating Ray Liotta's brains.
No. Well, I mean, okay, I can kind of agree with Jodie Foster there. That just doesn't seem like where that character would progress. So this is going to be one of those moments where I have to say I probably prefer the movie from what you're telling me, as far as her character goes, anyway.
It's a wild ending, and Cody, I'll let you continue talking about it, but it is worth saying. Just jump in real quick. I do wonder if Jodie Foster would have done this if she had known they were going to change the ending. I suspect no. I think she was. I think when Demi left, I think she was going to be gone. But yeah, um, yeah, an insane ending. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, I think it was wise of Ridley Scott and eventually Steve Zalian, who writes the script. They credit David Mamet, but from what I hear, whatever David Mamet wrote, pretty much none of it's in the final film.
Yeah, I've been scouring all over, Cody, to try to find something about Mamet's screenplay because I mean it's Mamet, right? I mean that's a big deal to get him to adapt a book, and I can't find anything. And I listened to the commentary, and Ridley Scott never mentions him, never even says his name. So it's and he. What's funny is he mentions somebody else who helped him with the final script, bounced ideas off of who isn't credited, but Mamet doesn't get any mention. It's weird. I wonder what happened with that.
Apparently he was approached first to write a draft or a treatment, and they did not like what he wrote, and he was in production on his own movie, so he wasn't available to do rewrites. And even though they didn't use hardly anything he wrote, I guess because of Writers Guild, he had to still be credited as a screenwriter on the film.
And because of who he is, right? I'm sure that
Right,
had
right.
something to do with it as well. You don't get
one
to
of the
just
biggest. Yeah, he's one of the biggest writers in the industry. So if you get someone of his caliber to even glance at your script, I guess you got to credit him. But I think it is an interesting point you bring up about Jodie Foster probably wouldn't have done this regardless if Demi didn't direct, because I think the way Demi handled Silence of the Lambs, and especially from it being from the point of view of Clarice, and how the cinematographer, because I wrote a paper about this about a year and a half ago, and I think they do an interesting thing in that film is they tilt the male gaze back onto the viewer. Instead of you watching through the male gaze of the camera, the male gaze is on you because you're seeing how all the men are looking at Clarice and how the different people are reacting to her. So you're getting the male gaze put on you instead of how it normally was in movies at this time.
Right. I was going to mention that too. The fact that is one aspect that they kept was like, even though she was she had moved up in her career, she was still getting. It was still a woman's world. I mean, she was still going through all of the crap that she had to put up with. Um, just you know, the sexism and the her just being a woman in a male dominated, I guess, then workplace is what they were trying to portray. But I did notice that in this that she was still putting up, especially with Ray Liotta's character and his goons that were around. And sorry if you can hear my dog does, but it did pinpoint on that. Like I did notice that this time, through Hannibal, where she was still putting up with all of that, bullcrap.
You know what, Chris, that's a great observation. And Cody, I'm glad you mentioned that about Demi's style in the first one, or some of his choices. And yeah, Chris, you're absolutely right. And it seems to me, one of the notes that the novel keeps hitting, and maybe this can explain the ending a little bit, because it's Gonzo. I mean, it's out there, but that she it seems to me, and Cody, if you can remember differently, let me know. But it seems I seem to remember that the novel really hits home on this. Nobody, no, well, Hannibal basically saying to her, "Nobody appreciates you, nobody cares, nobody knows your talents and knows your skills. Everybody is just jealous of you." Because it's hilarious. I mean, well, it's not hilarious, but I mean, it's out of control how awful Paul Krendler is. I mean, he's bad enough in the movie, right? But like in the novel, it's basically like he decided since she caught James Gum that he hated her for the rest of her career, and he was going to cut her off. And I think that, I mean, if Jodie Foster and Tom Harris got locked up in a room together and they had to fight it out, I guess, you know, like, why would Clarice do this? I guess Harris would say, because she gets treated like crap. Like nobody appreciates her. And Hannibal's really the only person who cares about her. So, I mean, I guess that makes a little bit of sense. But,
And he was also using that against her too, like psychologically, the fact that nobody liked her, because he keeps, you know, he brings up her background, he brings up, you know, what she's going through, but that's all. Do you think that's a tool, or do you think that's him actually caring for her, or is he trying to manipulate her into caring for him?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think he does respect and admire Clarice because I think he does, but he is a master manipulator, right? If we want to go into the franchise and the character history, like he manipulated the FBI for years that they didn't even know he was a serial killer because he was a consultant with the FBI on tracking other killers, which they explore in the TV series. But of course, you know,
If
in
you
the novel
see it,
Red Dragon,
I was
that's
going
how
to
Will Graham, you know, ends up capturing him is because, you know, they're kind of similar in their mindsets.
I was going to say that's one of the things I liked about. Again, I'm talking about the movie, not the novel, but I'm one of those that actually enjoy Red Dragon out of the series. I thought it was a good movie. Kind of, you know, it is what it is. But that's one of the things I did like that I did like about it is you get to see Edward Norton's character. You know, he comes in and it's after a dinner party, I guess, and he's cleaning up and he's nosing around through his books and sees the cookbook. Um, you know, and he puts two and two together, and um, you know, you get the little. Uh, it wasn't really a goof, but maybe he got um, too cocky, I guess. You guys there? Cutting out.
Yeah, we're still here.
yeah, Chris, I agree with that. And it is I can't help but make a little funny side comment here. Something that didn't dawn on me until, like, I don't know, the 50th time I watched the movie or how many ever ridiculous amount of times I've watched it. Hannibal did that to Mason Verger and kept his job.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't fire him. He's like, hey, I went to see this dude. This dude ended up ripping his face off. He was on PCP, I guess. I don't know what was going on. And he got to keep it. Again, a manipulator. He was able to make it look like he's like, well, Mason just did that to himself. I don't know what happened.
I mean, I guess so, but I mean, also maybe in the back of a lot of people's mind because of who Mason Verger is, they were kind of like, yeah, I guess he had it coming. Because, you know, he is a despicable, horrible human being. I mean, more so than Hannibal, right? And
Yeah.
Gary Oldman is just phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, that's one of, yeah, and you make a really great point, Cody. I think it's funny because they're all like, I'm sure all the authorities were acting like they were so upset that Mason Verger, this had happened to him. but deep down they're like, yeah, that child molester had it coming. I mean, since you brought him up, I gotta say, if somebody were to say, okay, well, Mark Bernard, why do you like this movie so much? I guess one of the 3 or 4 top things I would immediately go to is Gary Oldman. Maybe Gary Oldman, because I mean, Oldman's always good. You put him in whatever, he's going to be great. And then the performance through that makeup, and the makeup itself is all amazing, just amazing work.
That was amazingly grotesque.
Yeah. Funny thing about this is I heard that Gary Oldman got mad, even though he doesn't say this is true, because apparently he was supposed to be like billing right under Hopkins and Julianne Moore. But apparently they wanted people to not know he was in the movie as part of like, oh, because he's in heavy makeup, you don't know. And then they didn't even credit him till the DVD. But he says that that was part of the marketing for the movie, like to not be like, oh, hey, Gary Oldman's in the movie.
That would make sense. He's still not in the opening credits in any version I've ever seen, but yeah. So he wasn't even in the end credits in the theatrical version?
Apparently not. Apparently it was added back in after home video. But yeah, I mean, he's a master actor. He's able to play this character with very heavy makeup. And from the beginning, you're just disgusted by this individual. Like, you're just like, I don't even want to be in a room with this guy. Not even knowing his history, just his presence makes you feel icky.
Yeah, one of the things, Cody, since we're talking about Mason Verger, one of my favorite characters, I love how, I mean, the first time I saw this movie, let me just say this. I went and saw it in the theater, and I came out and was just going in 1,000 directions, just like, bah, 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 just saying a ton of stuff. And one of the people who went with me said, I can't tell her if you loved or hated that movie. And I'm like, actually, a little bit of both. It kind of went both ways. But one of the things that I really liked about it, when I first went to go see it, the nonchalant way in which Mason Verger first appears. He first appears in the first scene, which originally I don't think was the first scene. I think Ridley Scott meant for it to come later in the film, but he moved it up. And it introduces this horribly disfigured character so matter-of-factly. Like, I think the second shot in the film is like a close-up of him. And Ridley Scott said, I wanted to introduce him just as a person and not as a monster, like not without all this like build up, like, oh my gosh, here comes this terrifying person, or this just horribly disfigured person. But it just introduces him so matter-of-factly that it's weird. I mean, right off the bat, I was like just totally disoriented, in the film watching it.
Yeah, so what things do you hate about this movie?
Me?
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know, guys. I might fanboy out on you today. To be honest, I don't really dislike much of anything about it. I love it. I really love it. Yeah.
I'm right there with you, Mark. I mean, I like it. You were talking about what you loved about it. I know this is kind of doing a switcher, Cody. I'm sorry, but I'm going to go to one of the things that I love about it, and that's getting to see Hannibal in public. Mm-hmm. That's getting to see Hannibal in everyday life. Even though he's in hiding, he's living it up. He kills a curator, and so he can become, get the job. And it's an art. It's living the high life. And I thought that was cool about how he manipulates and murders his way to where he wants to be, and then
his serial killer's skills are really transferable, is what you're saying.
Yeah, like it really. Yeah, it really shows his serial killer skills. You
Oh,
know.
hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Cody. Hi, Mark.
Hello. And yet, I just got to jump in, Chris. That's an awesome point because from the perspective, and I'm going to age myself here. I'll try not to reveal exactly how old I am, but from going in to see this the first time, that was one of the big attractions. I mean, because we'd never seen him outside of cells, so that was really exciting.
Yeah, and as intelligent and as capable as he is, he's been doing this for 10, 12 years. And yeah, he's just able to work his way. Like he has some sort of charm. I know it's mostly manipulation, but there's some sort of charm he gives off to people that they're like, oh, yeah, this guy seems legit. I don't know if it's because, how smart he is and he has good taste in food and music and art. And he knows,
I,
like,
I think some of the best scenes. One of my favorite scenes in this movie is when the detective, after the detective calls the hotline, Hannibal knows that he knows. So, like he's going to get some suitcases or something, and that whole time he's just messing with his head because the detective, he's sweating. He's like, oh my god, like this dude could just rip my face off at any moment. And Hannibal is just he's letting him know that he knows, and just like little winks here and there, like, oh, I'm smarter than you. I know that you know who I am.
It's really toying with him.
So, am I going to let you out of here, or am I going to let you go? I'm going to leave that up to you. It was very intense moment.
I forget that actor's name, but he's great in this.
Oh
And I
yeah,
really like seeing him in anything he does. But even from his perspective, he should have got out soon as he called the hotline and told him where he was. When he went to pick up the money, he did his part. They have a trained team of, I guess they're mercenaries. Let them handle it.
I would have packed up and I would be like, I resign. Here's my badge.
Yeah, I don't.
Let's go.
Yeah, that guy, and that's so interesting, Chris. And I'm glad you all are pointing this out to talk about Hannibal, and really try to get in his head a little bit. And I will say, I like Hannibal quite a bit because as Barney says, he hates rude people. It's kind of hard to dislike him because what he dislikes is people who get on people's nerves. And so I don't know, it's kind of hard to sometimes hard to argue with that. But yeah, man, the way he messes with, am I going to say is it Potsy? Is that Cody's that sound about right?
I
I
think it's
want
pretty
to.
close.
I'll call him Potsy, and I don't know. It sounds like I'm putting a D in there or a T in there when there's not, but I'll say Potsy. Yeah, like Chris says, he knows. He knows that dude knows who he is, and that dude's trying to, and he knows obviously that he's trying to do it outside of the law, or else he would have just called the SWAT team in right off the bat. And it says so much about Hannibal and what makes Hannibal so amazing, because he knows, and he just messes with him, and he knows. I think I might be getting a little bit serial killer scary myself. That's going to make it hurt so bad, so much more when he kills him. It's just like, bro, you could have gotten out of this about 15 times. And yeah, like you said, why was he hanging out after the lecture in there with him, and the goons are outside? But Hannibal got in his head. Hannibal got him to hang around and got him to feel somehow like, no, you're fine. They're just right outside. You'll be okay. And then it's a payoff. you wait half the movie for it, but it pays off.
The fact that he executes him in the way that his ancestor was executed, and that was hung and disemboweled, and he did it. He cut him in a way that when he dropped, his bowels would spill out, and as grotesque as it is, it's kind of poetic that he would think Now, I don't think it was really set up that way. I think it was just on a whim, but he was like, oh, I can imagine Hannibal just like, oh, well, this is perfect because we just talked about how, your ancestor was hung from these walls, so I'll just do the same to you. How quaint is that?
Well, if you guys remember their first encounter, because he goes there to question him about the disappearance of the curator, Hannibal makes a reference to his ancestors' tragic demise and the circumstances that ended up with that, and then hints at, well, you got, removed from a much bigger case to deal with this. So he's hinting at this guy's kind of a corrupt cop. He's not like, or he's not really good at his job, one or the other.
Right.
And he's blowing smoke in Hannibal's face too. So I think Hannibal kind of like is already working the wheels of like, well, if I got to kill this guy. And
Yeah.
I
It's
don't
gonna
know
be
if they've ever explained it in the movies. They probably have, but the reason Hannibal's so good at removing limbs and cutting is because before he was a psychiatrist, he was a surgeon.
right.
It's also, it might be worth mentioning just real quick since we're talking about Posse. And I think, Cody, you said you'd read the novel, unless I'm misremembering it. It's a cool little twist. The case that Posse was working on, that where he planted evidence that he was tracking this killer, and he got a conviction, and it made a big hero out of him, and the dude got sent to prison, but it turned out that he planted evidence, and the killer never was found. That was a real killer that Thomas Harris worked into it. Yeah, a serial killer called, just known as the Monster, or maybe the Monster of Florence or something. But yeah, I thought that was, yeah. And on the commentary, Ridley Scott says like that was just way too much to try to work in to this. It was enough for Hannibal to just bring up something random and kind of insult him with that. But that was the thing, in the book that had disgraced Posse, is, to try to catch this killer. He got desperate, and he's like, I'll plant evidence on this one dude and get him thrown in prison. And so, yeah, I just thought that was an interesting little side note that, the novel had worked in that real life thing.
That's really cool. You were talking about, why people kind of like Hannibal Lecter or kind of find him charming, and you were talking about like the people he kills. And I'm not here to defend Hannibal Lecter as a character or his actions, but a big majority of his victims are like really POSs, right? They're like not good people.
Right.
I mean, there is the occasional innocent bystander that's just in his way that he kills because he feels like he has to.
Right. It's the same as the Punisher. It's like, he's a cool character. He's a cool character. He does take out.
You can do good works and not be a good person.
Yeah, he takes out a lot of bad guys, a lot of pedophiles and stuff like that. But he, is not someone you still want to make a hero out of.
And then I guess the other charming thing is we get more Hannibal, right? Because in Silence of the Lambs, is it even 20 minutes of screen time? Because I don't think it's a lot of, even though he ends up winning lead actor for that.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Cody. That's a great observation. Yeah, that's one thing. And, looking back historically, people have kind of pointed out is like he won Best Leading Actor, and he was, there were people nominated for Best Supporting Actor who had more screen time in their respective films than he did. But it's crazy too. I don't want to go down to Silence of the Lambs, get too sidetracked, but it's wild that Silence of the Lambs was, just out of nowhere in 91, won all these awards. It actually wasn't even technically eligible for consideration. It had came out so early in the year when people usually dump crap that they don't think will make money. which is when Hannibal got released. But make of that what you will. But Silence of the Lambs was just like this phenomenon, and it's one of I think it still holds its title to this day. Silence of the Lambs is one of three movies. There's the three.
It's three because it happened one night, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest are the other two.
Cody, bam, big high five. Wow, yeah, that's one of my favorite pieces of trivia. I like to trot out is the three movies that have won all the major awards. Excellent. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, it was. It was. I guess since I brought up Silence of the Lambs, I'll say this, and maybe I can move on. I love one of the things I think I just perversely love about this movie is Silence of the Lambs was so praised for its restraint. It's Hitchcockian. What's in your mind is scarier than what you see in front of you. It was so praised for that and just became, one of the most acclaimed films to ever, blow through the Oscars. I love that this movie is just gleefully the opposite of that. It's just like, and I remember like on Siskel and Ebert, or maybe it's Ebert and Roper at that time, but Ebert was just like, this is just so foul. In Silence of the Lambs, everything was done so well and with such taste and with such restraint. And I give this 2 thumbs down. But man, I gotta say, I think if this was a conscious decision on Ridley's part, or I don't know, man. I mean, if you read the novel, I don't know how you can adapt it without going there. But I love the just gonzo, like, we're just going for it. Like, they're going to be eating a dude's brain. This is not going to be your imagination is stronger than what you see. And I have to say just real quick, I really admire sometimes, because everything, my students, I'm teaching writing and they want to know hard and fast rules. I said, listen, the only hard and fast rule about writing is this: it's always going to be different. It always depends upon the context. So I appreciate the theater of the mind type films, the Hitchcock, the stuff that leaves more to the imagination than it shows. But every once in a while, I admire the ones that like try to go for it. And they're like, you know what? We're going to show you something in, bright on the big screen. We're going to show you something absolutely horrible that and I think so few people pull that off. I think maybe John Carpenter and The Thing maybe pulled it off. I think some of the Italian horror films, like from Fulci and people like that, kind of pull it off. Which I don't know. I like it, and that kind of ties in with the cool Italian vibe we get here in Florence. But I really like when movies. There's some films or books that are like, no, we're going to put it right in front of you. We're not going to suggest anything, Like Chris said, though, I mean, like, how would the posse thing be? How satisfying would that be if you didn't see guts, right? You got to have the guts hit the pavement. So I really admire this movie for just going for it. Like I say, you set the tone at the very beginning, like you have this horribly disfigured character just in this very banal type of conversation. I like it. I'm sorry, I'm starting to go off the rails here, but man, I love this movie. This movie is so good.
No,
we're more than likely going off the rails. So.
I'm gonna sidebar for a second, but I promise it'll kind of come back to what you were just talking about, Mark. So everyone always mentions like, oh, Hitchcock, and more of what you see, more of what you don't see. It's all in your mind. Well, if anyone knows what we know about Alfred Hitchcock now, part of that was because he had to deal with the production code. I guarantee you, if Alfred Hitchcock was a filmmaker today, he would be making movies like Brian De Palma. They would be very sexual, very sleazy. You would see everything Hitchcock wanted to put on the screen. So, and coming back to Hannibal, like you said, it's kind of hard not to make it this way because of the nature of the book. And I think that's interesting as a sequel to not kind of do the similar thing that they did in Silence. And maybe at the time, and I don't know how much of a, you know, defense this movie has come back in 20 years, but I think it's interesting that he takes a different turn than what he did in the previous two stories of this character. Well, he was a side character really in the first two books, and then in this story, it's all him. And so I think that's bold to take it in a different direction than just repeat. Because they could have, because right, it's Academy Award-winning film, very popular. It's considered every time a new serial killer movie comes out, they're like, it's the best since Silence of the Lambs, you know, every time. So I think that's great of them to go this direction.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think you have to when something is so supposedly the best of, that was ever done. I don't think you can redo it. And I don't know. Again, I'm aging myself. I think I might be a little bit older than you guys, but I'll try not to. I'm a little embarrassed, so I'll try not to reveal just how much older. But I could just barely remember before Silence of the Lambs. I was little and just getting into movies then. But I tell you, living in that moment, it's hard to explain how much of a paradigm shift Silence of the Lambs was. It seems commonplace now, and it's like, oh, that's Tuesday night on CBS, hour-long drama. But at the time, it blew people's minds, and it was, yeah.
I remember my parents rented it, and I remember as young as I was, I got to sit in there and watch it. But believe it or not, that was weird. I grew up watching like all the Die Hards and Lethal Weapons and Seagal movies. I mean, everything was on the table. It's like I would have to cover my eyes if there were boobies, or if it was a sex scene, they would fast forward it. But everything else was like, okay, apparently. But I remember that coming out, and that was a big deal. Like my dad was like, "Oh, this is this new movie," and seeing stuff on talk shows and news, even on the news. And didn't they wheel him out with the mask on during the awards?
I don't think it was Anthony Hopkins. It might have been Billy Crystal or whoever was hosting the Oscars that year. I wasn't watching
Billy
the
Crystal.
Academy.
It's weird, but when I think Silence of the Lambs or anything about this series, that always stands out to me. I just remember seeing that at the awards show. Like that's how big it was. That they wheeled. I guess you said it was Billy Crystal or whoever was out with the mask on and everything. And it's been parodied. It's been, I've seen it in cartoons. I think Tiny Toons did a little skit where was it Buster? Oh, whoever his name was, had the mask. You saw it everywhere.
I think it's one of those movies that just becomes a cultural zeitgeist. I mean, even look at our culture today and how many people listen to true crime podcasts or watch true docuseries. I think this movie and Thomas Harris kind of spawned that. And here's a sidebar that's going to come back into it. I don't think you get the X-Files without these things, because very much not just Mulder, but also the series Millennium are very heavily influenced by these Thomas Harris novels. And Gillian Anderson was one of the actresses they almost approached to play Clarice, which she ended up playing a character in the Hannibal series. But I guess at the time she was in the X-Files, so she probably didn't want to play another FBI agent. But they almost approached almost any actress between the age of 25 and 40 to replace Jodie Foster at this time. And we haven't talked about her yet, but I think Julianne Moore does a solid job in this movie, especially for big shoes to fill.
That's what Lindsay and I were talking about, or she brought it up. She was like, wow, she she was a really good replacement for Julianne Moore. I mean, Julianne Moore for um, a moment. I'm having a moment, Cody. Jodie Foster. Thank you for Jodie Foster.
Yeah, that's that, and that. Yeah, that's not easy, but yeah, she did it. Julianne Moore is just one of my favorite actresses, and I think we do need to talk about her. But man, I cannot help piggybacking off of something that Chris said, and I'll go back to that just really briefly about being wheeled out, about Hannibal being wheeled out with the mask on and in the straitjacket, and how iconic that became. I think that it's so smart on Ridley's part to begin Hannibal with Barney gifting Mason with that piece. But I think that just does a really great job of getting you right in the movie, like playing off of that image. You're right there, and the title card comes out of it. And I say I think that's an example of how iconic that image you were talking about became.
That mask is just as iconic as Jason's mask or Freddy's glove or Michael Myers' mask, the Shatner mask, or any of the other like horror icon gimmicks, with mask and weapons and gloves and stuff like that. That face mask is right up there with those guys. Like when people talk horror, he's lumped in with these monsters, and there's no supernatural powers, there's no super strength, he doesn't come back from the dead. This is straight up like serial killer, and it is strange that we do lump him in, with those monsters. But he's considered one of the big baddies, the big.
Well, I think I could be wrong, but I think he's ranked as the #2 villain of all time in film history with the AFI list.
Oh wow! Because you could sit down with him next to an airplane, sit down next to him on an airplane, excuse me, and chat this guy up, and he would probably charm the shoes off of you, and by the time you make it to your hotel room, your dinner. I mean, that's just, and you would just go along with it. He's just that charming.
Who was #1 on that list, Cody? I can't help but ask.
I believe it was Darth Vader.
I wasn't expecting that. That kind of came out of nowhere. But I feel bad that I derailed the conversation when Cody had brought it to Julianne Moore. So we'll go back. We'll go back to her and say
it's okay. It happens.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
So interesting thing about the development of this movie, of course they want to get the team back, right? The team that made the winning movie. And then they're not sure who's coming back. They're like, well, we got to have at least Hopkins or Foster. We have to have one of them come back. So they were even considering replacements for Anthony Hopkins if he decided not to do it. And I believe John Malkovich was one of them. I can't remember who the other actor was they were considering. But when Anthony Hopkins agreed to do it, they kind of asked him well, who would you cast if you had a choice? And he said, well, Julianne Moore, I really like her. I forget what they had worked on, something previously together or knew each other from something, and he suggested her. Not apparently that wasn't the reason they cast her, but apparently they did ask him, and that's who he said they should cast.
Malkovich, man. I'm glad. Nothing against Malkovich, or maybe a little bit against him. I am so glad that didn't happen.
I could see.
Yeah, that would have been pretty hammy, I think.
I could see him being like one of the other serial killers that they're trying to hunt down, being a bad guy, or something, but not as Hannibal. No way. That would have been too weird.
Yeah, I'll just say real quick, Cody. I wonder sometimes if this movie would have even gotten made without Anthony Hopkins. I mean, it's titled Hannibal. I guess it probably would, but you wouldn't have somebody like Ridley Scott signing on to direct, and you wouldn't have Gary Oldman willing to sit through 6 hours of makeup every day, to be in it. So, yeah, that's one of those wild things to think about. I'd never be able to imagine anybody else as Hannibal until the TV show, and the TV show convinced me, like, yeah, he can be replaced. Like, there's other people who can do that part.
I was supposed to say, I think Mads Mikkelsen does a great job, but he does something different. He's not trying to do the same type of performance that Hopkins gave. So how do you feel about Brian Cox?
Oh man, I forgot Brian Cox. Poor old Brian Cox. I dig him. Sometimes, looking back at Manhunter, I can't help but think that Anthony Hopkins didn't get something from it, because I mean, they're not the same, but it's in the vein of. I mean, they're not too different. I'm sorry, poor old Brian Cox. That must really irritate him when people are all like, "Oh yeah, you were the first Hannibal." Have you all, not to sidetrack, but have you all done a Michael Mann series or talked about him or anything?
We have not yet.
What's the opinion about Manhunter? Do you all have any strong feelings?
I think Manhunter rules for what it is. I think it's very 80s. It's very what Michael Mann was doing, like on Miami Vice and that other TV show he had. But I really dig it. Tom Noonan is great. He's frightening. I really like William Peterson as Will Graham. I do prefer Hugh Dancy. Hugh Dancy is my favorite actor that's played Will Graham. But I like what William Peterson does with it. It's very similar to Live and Die in L.A., another movie he did at that time period, his performance.
I rented it on VHS, so I need to go back and visit it. That's how long it's been since I've seen it. So it was a VHS rental. It's been that long. So I need to go back and revisit that movie.
I didn't even know of its existence till Hannibal came out, though. So I didn't know there was a Hannibal Lecter movie before Silence of the Lambs, and then I read somewhere.
I remember watching it. It was just one of those random, little story here. But my local video store, my movie gallery, they at one point they had a deal. It was like 5 movies, 5 nights, $5, and it was all on their older selection. So I would go in there and just pick up 5 movies, and that's where I remember picking it up from. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it had a connection to any Silence of the Lambs or anything like that, which I'm pretty sure it was there on the box. I either just glanced over it. I was like, oh, this looks cool. I'll take it. So I was like you, Cody. I didn't know there was any connection to it. Probably till around Hannibal, but I had seen it before that.
Okay, the other guy they considered was Tim Roth.
It sounds like the dog has an opinion about that.
I know.
Sounds like the dog does not like Tim Roth.
He's saying thumbs down on that one. No way, dude. That's awful. I'm sorry. I love Tim Roth, but can I say real quick? Do you want to talk about a sidebar here? A side note. Oh, I have to pray. I have to pray for forgiveness for saying this, because Tim Roth rules. Where would we be without Mr. Orange? But I think I recently took another look at the Incredible Hulk, and I don't know if anybody has ever been worse cast as a military. Like, he's got the thing on with William Hurt. He's got all of his gear on, and it doesn't even look like it fits. Like, it looks like it's all like for a bigger person, and he's all like unshaven and disheveled. And what a horrible cast for someone in the military. However, sorry, I can't see him. I can't see him as Hannibal. Like, Jodie Foster is taller than Tim Roth, and I bet Julianne Moore is too. So that might have been kind of tough.
Yeah. Um well, I'll continue on your sidebar for just a moment. I full-heartedly agree with that. That it was not good casting, even though Tim Roth is a really good actor. But that movie just feels out of place now, not just because of its issues with the Hulk rights and the MCU and the recasting of the character, but like I rewatched it a while back and it doesn't hold up that great. I hot take, I think the Ang Lee version's a better movie.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the Ang Lee version to be rediscovered because that thing, that movie
That's
is
so
nuts.
underrated. Yeah.
It's
I love the
crazy.
cut. I love the style, the editing, and that. It's just off the wall and so comic booky. It's just awesome.
So
was-
here were
yeah.
some other people they considered for Clarice: Kate Blanchett, Angelina Jolie, Hilary Swank, Ashley Judd, Helen Hunt, and Gillian Anderson.
Helen Hunt or Ashley Judd, maybe, and those are big maybes because I think that there might.
I
be
could see Kate
probably
Blanchett
swing-
doing it,
They could swing
but
the accent.
she
a
could
little
do
more,
anything.
Yeah, but I don't know.
But I think Julianne Moore does a solid job, especially having to come into the place of another actor who's kind of made the role iconic, and it was an Academy Award-winning performance.
Oh, I'm totally cool with her. Yeah, like having been chosen.
I have a question for you guys. I'm dying to hear the what you all have to think about this. So, since you all do the director's series and stuff like that, what's the through line with Ridley Scott? Like, because you all were so generous, had me on for the Coen brothers, and a Coen movie's a Coen movie. We got that. There's a lot to it, but it's not hard to kind of run through some themes or motifs that are Coen-esque. I don't know who else: Carpenter, Cronenberg, Hitchcock. I mean, just about all the other auteurs. What have you guys found with Ridley so far?
So here's what I think. I think Ridley Scott has two types of movies he's really passionate about making, and they're usually historical epics or weird sci-fi idiot like existential movies about God and the universe and our purpose. And then I think there's a string of movies he just makes because he wants to work. I think he's a bit of a workaholic, and that it's like, well, if I do this movie, then I can get financing for this other movie I want to do. Because if you look at his career there, and like even this one it's a director for hire. Like I don't even really see his visual flair in this one really. Like cuz most of his movies that's the through line is like they're so visually distinctive. Like cuz I don't really consider Ridley Scott really an auteur. I think he kind of started out as one, and then I think like his career I think he's just a little bit more elevated. He's probably the most renowned director for hire that we ever got. Like, I wouldn't quite put him in a Ron Howard category, but he's probably not a few steps ahead of Ron Howard as far as like the name is big, but like there's not usually like, oh yeah, this is a Ridley Scott movie. Even to some of the other directors who have worked on the Alien franchise or even the Hannibal Lecter franchise, like what a Michael Mann movie looks like. You even kind of know what a Jonathan Demme movie feels like. And like Cameron, Fincher, even the French director, they all have distinctive themes and styles they work with. But yeah, I think Ridley Scott is somewhere in the middle. He's somewhere between an auteur and a director for hire. I don't know what you call that, but I think that's where he is.
That's awesome answer. Yeah, Chris, what do you think?
You know what? I'm gonna have to agree with Cody because he touched on basically the same points. I mean, he has his hits and misses, and I agree with Cody. I think he's a workaholic. He's got to be doing something. He's kind of like Clint Eastwood, where he's constantly he's going to be in his 90s, still doing stuff.
Well,
And
he's over 80 now.
yeah, so he's just going to keep going and going. He's like the Energizer bunny, So
I love hearing your answers because it's uncanny. They say great minds think alike, right? Because coming on here, I mean, I don't have the through line with Ridley, but the thing that I was thinking about, it dovetails with what you two guys say almost exactly. Because it seemed to me like in his career, there's this tension between the commercial, like I mean, everything he does is slick. It's very visual, polished. It's like almost typical Hollywood movie. But then, like you say, he wants to do this weird stuff too. And while I think of him primarily as a commercial director, I mean, he's made, for me at least, and I don't know if I've seen all of his film. Oh, I know I haven't seen all of them. I don't know how many I haven't seen. But I think he made two of the most, I guess I'll say, for lack of a better expression, like ambiguous or obtuse mainstream films, which I would say Blade Runner, I mean, that's been said, and Prometheus also. Prometheus was weird. And I did not get it until I watched it. And I don't know why I kept going back to it, but something nagged at me and I watched it like 5 or 6 times. So, yeah, I think I'm sorry, I'm going a long way around the barn of saying that there is this weird tension between the commercial and just the odd with him, just really, really weird. And I guess
And
this is a melding of those two. I don't know.
And I think Alien Covenant, whatever you think of that movie, I think that is like a perfect example of those two sides warring, because I think like they're like, well, Prometheus made enough money, you can do a sequel, but we want you to make more of an alien movie. And he's like, yeah, but I want to do like this plot about this weird robot and like humanity's existence and relationship with God and yada yada. So like, and then the two is, so you get kind of a mix of both movies in one thing, and you're either like, what is this? Or you're like, oh, it's kind of interesting.
You could call those movies David 1 and David 2, right? So
Yeah.
maybe we'll get a David trilogy at some point. Maybe he'll finish that up if 20th Century Fox ever forgives him for Prometheus and Covenant. God, Covenant's weird. Um, oh, I just want to say, Cody, I do have a story about Ridley Scott, but I want to make certain that I have to share it with you guys, but I want to do it at the end so I don't cut anybody off.
Sure. And then the final thing I'll say with the question you asked, I would very much like to visit an alternate universe where Blade Runner and Legend were both commercial hits, and what kind of career Ridley Scott would have had, because I think that's part of why he kind of has the career he has, is because those were two very ambiguous budgeted genre films that just did not hit. And I think that's why we get these hit and misses. He gets a hit with Thelma and Louise. I'm gonna do a Columbus movie. It flops, so he's got to do White Squall and G.I. Jane, and then Gladiator is a huge success. And then he kind of goes back and forth between the projects he wants to make, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. I don't think he's not a skilled director, but he's probably a director that script has to be pretty tight for the movie to work. I don't think he's a director that can elevate his scripts, even if it looks great, because usually all his movies look great. I will say one thing. I like getting back to this movie, in the book that's not in this movie is the sister character. I believe her name is Margot, because that makes more sense why she would throw Mason Verger in with those boars than his personal doctor just is tired of working for him because he's a disgusting a-hole. But it's fine. But that is a subplot I think works better in the book than in the movie.
Right.
Chris, not to cut you off, but I have to say, after this, I beg you, go and read the Wikipedia summary of Hannibal and see what ends up happening to Mason Verger. It's worse than the movie, if you can imagine such a thing.
Oh, I'm gonna check it out. Yeah, that's probably gonna regret it, but I'll go check it out.
Yeah, you'll regret it.
They do introduce this subplot a little bit in the Hannibal series because I guess they didn't get to do as many seasons as they want, so they kind of run elements of Hannibal within the series in a different timeline, because they do bring Mason and Margot Verger into the series.
Nice. Again, that's on my list of series to check out.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I definitely recommend it. I think we need to talk about Ray Liotta too, rest in peace. I think he does a pretty good job here of being a disgusting bureaucratic man.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He's a good sport.
Yeah.
He definitely played a good misogynist heel kind of, like, he's played a lot of these type of characters before, but he's so good at it. Like, even in Getting Back to Demi, his character in Something Wild, he's great in that movie. And like,
I guess he's just that movie in a while, Cody.
I guess he's just great at playing this, and I love his reactions. Like after Hannibal drugs him, and like he's sitting there with half his head off, basically his scalp off, and he's just like, "Oh, that's tasty," and he has no idea what's going on.
Yeah, there's some behind the scenes stuff if you all haven't had a chance to take a look at it. On the DVD release or Blu-ray, there was a big long making of, because that was when, you know, DVD was blowing up and everything got like a big making of featurette. But man, I'm glad they did one for Hannibal, because again, you know, I love the movie, and Liotta is just loving it when they're shooting that scene. He's laughing his ass off, and like he's like, "Look at the oh my god, I did the thing." I mean, it's just, I don't know if he's going out of his way to show that he didn't mind doing that scene, or if he is legit just like having a great time. But it's very endearing. It made me very sad when I rewatched that and then remembered that he had recently passed away. Very sad, but yeah, man, he's great. He's great.
Another connection, the actor Frankie Fashion, I believe is his name. I'm probably saying his last name wrong. But he's also in Manhunter. He might have played a different character though in Manhunter, but he's in Manhunter, so he's in all three of these movies. Just kind of interesting.
Who, Cody? Who is that?
The guy that plays Barney.
Oh, Barney's in Manhunter? That's cool. I got to go back and check that out.
I don't know if he's playing Barney though. He might be playing a different character in that one.
That's crazy.
He wasn't in.
I don't think he's in Red Dragon. No.
Okay.
That sucks. They should have gotten him back for that one. They to complete the Barney trilogy of that dude playing Barney. That's crazy though. That's wild. I didn't know he was in Manhunter. Like you, Chris. It's been a while since I've seen Manhunter from beginning to end. If I had to summarize it, I would have a very, very, very hard time. So I gotta check that one out again too.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's very 80s. It's very Michael Mann, but Shout Factory has a Blu-ray of it, so there's a pretty good copy of it if you can find it.
I love Shout Factory.
Yeah, I think it's out of print, but the Blu-ray is. Because I went and looked for it after this, and it's going for some, I mean, not astronomical prices, on eBay, but some pretty healthy prices, and online various other places. But with 4K coming out, I'm looking at all these Blu-rays that are expensive, and I'm like, come on, 4K, do a 4K version of this, so the Blu-ray gets real cheap, and I can run out and grab it. You gotta love them.
Maybe Arrow can do a release of it. Maybe.
Yeah, I want a 4K release so that Blu-ray goes down and I can get it.
Speaking of 4K, and this is off topic, but I just watched the 4K Godfather, and oh my gosh, that was just gorgeous looking. Like just I just saw, I'd see things in the background I'd never even noticed, and I don't know, it was cool. A shout out to 4K. I know. Look, I collect VHS. There's a soft spot for that grainy footage in my heart, but man, 4K is just so easy on the eyes these days because you're getting older, and you know.
Sidebar that you brought up The Godfather. Isn't it kind of wild that Francis Ford Coppola has spent like the last 20 or 25 years like basically remastering his movies and making money off wine that he's going to self-finance his passion project that'll probably be his final film?
I heard it's going to be a doozy. It's supposed to be epic, from what I understand. Like, we're talking what Cameron wants, you know, his newest franchise to be, like, type of epic. Is from what I understand. So,
well, I think he's been trying to make this movie for 30 or 40 years. So,
he's getting by George and everyone.
So, do we have anything else we want to talk about with Hannibal? Is there something we haven't addressed or something we need to bring up? Why do we think the movie is not as liked as the other stories in the franchise? Is it because of where it goes?
Cody, would you say that because I think you know, I think you know this a lot better than I do. Is this movie just not? Has it never found an audience? Because I haven't really kept up with, you know, the Harris franchise and the texts that are loved and the texts that aren't. Is this one that like? Is this one kind of like a? I don't want to use a prejudicial term, prejudice towards redheads, but the redheaded stepchild. Is this the? I mean, have people still not kind of got down with this movie? Do they not dig it, or?
I think there are defenders, but I think popular opinion is it's at least better than the prequel, which I've never seen, which I guess was made concurrently when Harris was writing the novel. Because that's a thing that's brought into the book that's not in the movie, Chris, is there's the backstory of Hannibal Lecter's childhood and him and his sister being tortured by Nazis and the Nazis eating people and them having to eat people to survive. So there's like a whole psychological backstory of why maybe Hannibal Lecter eats people.
And that was, I did go see the... what was that movie? Was it Hannibal Rising that they did?
Yeah, that's the name of it.
I just did not. I mean, they went straight up horror movie with it, and it wasn't my cup of tea. Like,
is it not psychological enough for you?
It wasn't. Yeah, I mean, even Hannibal went more the horror movie route, but I don't know. Hannibal Rising just didn't. It just didn't. I don't know. I didn't care much for it, but. They covered that in Hannibal Rising. You know, you start out with he and his sister and the Nazis, and then him. I don't know. It's been a while. Going to live somewhere and helping a. I can't remember if it was in a school that where they dissected bodies or something like that.
Like a medical school.
Like a medical school. Thank you, Lindsay. Medical school. But it's been a while. I could be skewing some of the. But anyway, it just didn't. I don't know. It was weird. It was a weird film, and I just didn't bode well with me. Wasn't my thing.
But yeah, I think a lot of people prefer Red Dragon over this one, and you know.
Wow, that's crazy. Oh well, if that's the case, I think I have an idea, or at least, I mean, maybe a theory. And Chris, is so interesting. You see, I haven't read nor seen Hannibal Rising because I've heard reviews like yours, um, that it just, wasn't that great. But I just think it's funny. Ridley did say he wasn't feeling that flashback stuff in Hannibal. He didn't like it, and none of it made it to the movie. So maybe he knew, maybe he could see that, Chris. That's no good.
I think that would have pushed it like directly into horror movie territory, and that would have turned off a lot more people that aren't into the horror genre. Like I think Hannibal walked that fine line of being just thriller enough, and then with the horror movie elements, and not tilting, over into that genre. But again, that's one of the reasons why I like it. I like horror movies, but this was.
So I think this movie has a similar vibe to another horror sequel to a legacy horror film, even though that film got better reception from critics, where it did the opposite. This one did well financially, but critics didn't like it. I think this and Doctor Sleep have similar vibes.
I haven't read or seen Doctor Sleep. I heard what it was about, and I'm like, I can't do it. The older I get, the more emotional I get, and I cry at just about anything. And I'm like, hospice, yo, I'm out of here. So I got to sit this one out. I don't know anything about Dr.
We started it and had to stop it. And this was like, last October? Yeah, this was last October, and we have not gotten back to it yet. I know I hate doing that with, usually if I have to stop a movie, I finish it the next day. With this one, we just have not gotten back to yet. But it's on my list because we got to the part where the kid got it, and I'll leave it at that. Cody, you know what I'm talking about. And then we had to stop it because we have 3 kids of our own. I think they were probably trying to come into the bedroom at the time, and we're like, nope.
That's a pretty traumatic scene, and Jacob Tremblay, that kid can act better than most adults.
Right.
I will say
why do you make that compare? You're probably getting ready to say, Cody, and I cut you off. Why were you making that comparison? Yeah, I want to hear more about it.
Well, because they're both sort of legacy sequels to what people would consider untouchable horror movies, right? And both of those are more psychological. Now, Doctor Sleep's not as gory and grotesque as this film, but it's got that kind of vibe. Like it's almost a different story, even though it's in the same landscape. And I think Mike Flanagan, if you haven't seen anything Mike Flanagan does, he's one of the best horror directors working today. I think he does the impossible. He pleases all the people that don't like The Shining because it's not like the book, and connects it with the Kubrick film to make like a really solid sequel to both. But yeah, that's why I because they have a certain similar vibe.
Well, if I could see Dr. Sleep then being embraced, if he's able to walk that line, Cody, yeah, definitely. That's impressive, and it's a good thing if you can please both the King people and the Kubrick people. I'll say I think this movie is maybe not that well regarded. It's there's a prejudice against sequels that's going away, I think, but there's always going to be that. But this movie is just so antithetical to Silence of the Lambs. I mean, it's just so out there. It's so wild. I think it goes too far for some people. I think that it's either too gross. The Ray Liotta brain scene is either too gross or just too goofy, and I like gross and goofy. I don't like horror comedies, but I like moments of comedy in horror. So that's I don't know. I think this movie is just in such. Gosh, this is going to open up a whole can of worms, but I'll just say it's in such bad taste. And when I say bad taste, I mean not like Silence of the Lambs and what everybody praised that for. It's in such bad taste. It's so goofy. It's so strange. I like Mason Verger, the character, a lot. He's a really great character. I don't. I think that alone, people may find it hard to watch because it has such a grotesque character who's featured so prominently. I don't know. Hannibal's not a good movie. It's one of those movies. It's one of those guilty pleasures, I guess.
It's an acquired taste.
Yeah. Well said.
Either you like
Yeah.
it or you don't, you know?
I think you're right, Mark. I think it just goes too far for a lot of people to like. And I think a lot of people just, are going to have their prejudice because, for a lot of people in the film community, Silence of the Lambs is a perfect movie. So it doesn't matter what this movie was, it was never going to live up to what Silence of the Lambs was. And you're either along for the ride for what it's doing, or you're like, well, this is nothing like Silence of the Lambs. I don't like it. But I think I can see why you're saying it's a guilty pleasure, but I think it's not made badly. It's directed well, it's acted well, it looks like a Hollywood movie. It doesn't look cheap. But I can see if someone said, I don't like this, and I'd be like, I understand. It's not your cup of tea. But I can't say that it's like a badly made movie that I enjoy, because there are movies that are not well made that I enjoy. I think this is just an acquired taste, as Chris said. You're either along for the ride or
It is a
you don't
very
like.
2001 movie. I'll put it to you that way.
Oh, totally. It is of its time period.
It just it just has that feel. You know how movies around the 99 into the early 2000, 2001, 2002 era just had this. It was a transition feel to it. I know that's weird. I know a lot of people may not get that or understand it. I'm trying to describe it the best way that I can, but if you go back and look at movies from like 88, 89, 90, 91, and in that period, there's a transition, and you can see it in the movies that are being made and released at that time. And it's kind of hard to explain, and that's a whole, again, we'll get into that at another time. But to me, it just had this weird, I don't know, just this weird transition feel to it. Like it's just one of those weird movies that came out around that time, in that time period, in those few years that.
Is it the adjustment to the technology that everybody was using?
Maybe so.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe it was technology. It was dress. It was just.
We also had.
It was.
We also had the whole Y2K, and then the September 11th, like right there. I think was probably a big shift for a lot of things too.
It was right before that shift into patriotism that was really thrown into a lot of movies after 9/11. I don't mean that in any disrespect, but you can see it. I mean,
it gets militant.
Even up into Transformers, you can see it. Michael Bay movies.
Well, I mean, you could say that about almost all of Michael Bay's movies.
Right. But, sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Okay, I was just going to say, Lindsay, thank you so much for bringing up 9/11, because you made me remember one of my favorite things about this movie. Osama bin Laden appears not once, but 2 times, which is messed up. But yeah, he's on like the FBI top 10, and this is pre-2000. Yeah, that's just another wild thing about this movie.
Yeah, 6 months before 9/11, I guess, is when this movie's released.
I think that it was. They did it as a Valentine's Day thing.
Yeah, nothing says Valentine's Day like eating your heart.
Right. I graduated that year. That's crazy.
But I think they did it
transitional in that period.
Maybe so. Yeah.
I think they did it as a February release because that's when Silence of the Lambs came out, so they were hoping for similar success.
Yeah. But the movies. Well, the movie release calendar has just been thrown away at this point. I mean, we're in new territory. But it used to be summer blockbuster, then you move into award season, and then January, February, March, just like, we don't know what to do with this stuff. Let's just throw it out there, which ironically enough was what happened to Silence of the Lambs. Orion was going out of business, and they're like, let's just get this crap thriller out there, and let's get on with our lives and wrap this up. And like I said, it was released even before the Academy consideration time frame, but they snuck it in just because it was a weak year for movies. No disrespect to the Disney crowd, but Beauty and the Beast was nominated for Best Picture. Now, I'm hoping my wife didn't hear me say that, because that's her favorite movie of all time. I'm going to get my butt whooped. But, just not, which is sad, because JFK came out that year, which is, I love that film. But I don't know, man. It's I'll just peter out right there.
It is.
I'll bring one more thing up, and then we'll go ahead and rate this movie. Legendary or schlocky film producer Dino De Laurentiis has the rights to the Hannibal Lecter series, or did, but he did not buy the rights to Silence of the Lambs because of Manhunter not doing so well at the box office. But when Silence of the Lambs became a huge hit, then he's like, well, I have to have the rights to the next book when it comes out. And when Demi turned it down and they ended up approaching Ridley Scott to direct it, he went to the set of Gladiator and was like, do you want to direct Hannibal? And Ridley Scott, not thinking about it being about, a sequel to Silence, he's like, I'm literally shooting a Roman epic right now. Why do you want me to do a movie about Hannibal?
Be gone, peasant.
Yo, so Cody, I gotta hit rewind for a second, because I love Dino, man. Dino's a trip. That guy's, and I always mean to like sit down and like, hopefully, like there's a biography of him that's been written or something. And incidentally, I saw his parking spot on the Universal Studios lot when I went out there about a decade or so ago, and that was a trip to see that sign, like reserved for Dino. But so Dino was, I said I'd forgot a lot about Manhunter. So Dino was, and so the Manhunter, he passed on Silence of the Lambs because of that. Oh, man. Yeah. Nah, he was right there waiting for those Hannibal rights. And he's like, I don't care. We're doing this if like Billy Zane plays Hannibal. I don't care. We're making a movie.
Yeah, and I guess that's like the whole issue with them doing the Clarice character in the series too, is like the rights for that story is not the same with the others. I don't know. It's a mess. So if we don't have anything else we want to talk about this movie, let's go ahead and rate it. So for Ridley Scott, because he had a commercial and art background before he became a film director, if you love this movie, you think it's great, it's a masterpiece, we're going to call it a work of art. If you think it's pretty good, it's well made, it does its job, it's constructually sound. If you think it's obscure, if it's something more for just fans only or cinephiles, it's a deep dive. If it's kind of mediocre, doesn't hit the mark, it's not up to snuff, then it's a nice pat on the back, good effort. And then if it's just truly horrible, it's a disaster, it's a piece of crap, well, that only belongs on Ridley's mommy's fridge.
Hey, Chris, you want to take it? Yeah, you take it first. You and Lindsay go first, please.
Yeah, I'll go with conceptually sound. It's
a solid movie.
Yeah, it's solid.
However you feel about looking at Ray Liotta's brains is kind of aside from the overall rating, but it's a good movie. I definitely was able to pay attention, and yes, and Cracker enjoyed it too, and it was engaging, so it was constructionally sound for me.
Yeah, I like to revisit it every great once in a while, and after watching that, I'm gonna have to go watch Red Dragon and the others now. So, but yeah, it's solid. It's constructionally sound for me.
It seems like when I come on here, I'm like a jerk. I try to break the rules with the ratings. if I wanted to be a jerk about it, I would say it's a piece of art on Ridley Scott's mom's refrigerator. If I wanted to cheat, but you know what? I won't cheat. I'll play by the rules. Since Chris and Lindsay were kind enough to play by the rules, I'll do it as well.
No,
I will
that's
say,
pretty good, though. I like that
To be
category.
I
fair,
think
I'm
that's
pretty sure that Ridley's mommy has all his movies on her fridge.
You should write that down, Cody. That we should add that to our category now. Like, there are some that I feel that way. They're like, man, it's such a piece of crap movie, but I love it. But that's like the best way to describe it. It's a piece of art.
Somebody
on his
somewhere is
mom.
proud.
Yeah, his mom loves it, even if nobody else does.
I think this sums up the movie perfectly because I think it's extremely well made. It's extremely a well-looking movie, but like if someone told you they hate this movie and think it's garbage, you'd be like, "You're not wrong, but I don't agree with you."
yeah, let me play by the rules. So real quick, I want to play by the rules. But Lindsay is right. There is a flaw in that barometer because all of Ridley's movies are probably up on his mother's refrigerator. I'll say work of art, but I'll say work of art because it's not art. It's antithetical to art, and that makes it art, ironically. So I'll say I mean, if anybody is listening and they're on the fence, watch it. Big time, watch it.
So, do you think this is like the second best Hannibal Lecter movie, or would you put it below Manhunter?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, what was the question? I mean, is Silence of the Lambs not in the running?
Well, I'm just assuming that's your first. Is that not your favorite? That's me being a jerk then.
No.
Assuming.
That's you being a reasonable human being that hasn't obviously had some kind of serious head injury, and you look at Hannibal and think it's amazing. Gosh, well, let me say this. If we take out Silence of the Lambs easily, this is my second. Easily. I mean, like nothing even comes close. If I was having a bunch of buddies over, and I'm not a big drinker anymore, but if people were drinking, and I don't know, having a good time, and they're like, let's watch a movie, I'd say Hannibal before I would say Silence of the Lambs. But let me stop and be a reasonable person and say, yes, Silence of the Lambs is better than this. But yeah, Manhunter, no, Michael Mann v. Ridley Scott. I'm going Ridley every time. Seriously. Yeah.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate your honest opinion because, we all have different opinions and different tastes. And yeah, I think Hannibal would be more of a better watch with a rowdy, drunk crowd than this more quiet, reserved psychological thriller. But I'm gonna piggyback on Chris and Lindsay's rating. I think it's constructually sound. It's a well-made movie because it's directed by a talented director. It has an all-star cast, and they're not going to phone it in. They don't. It's well-made. I think if this movie was a masterpiece, people would still be like, "Well, it's fine. It's not." I mean, that's always going to happen. It's just when you make a movie like Silence of the Lambs, anything after it's going to live in its shadow. But I think they did a decent job with this. And I think it was smart of them to change the ending from the book to get a more, because there might have been riots in the street had they done the book ending in the movie. Even though I do know people who love the book who hated that they changed the ending. But I think this works, and I think people should go back and watch it and just watch it for what it is instead of wanting it to be like a true sequel to Silence of the Lambs, if that makes sense. Just watch it for the movie it is instead of trying to compare it to Silence of the Lambs. I mean, you don't compare.
Watch it around Halloween, if that helps. Throw it in with some horror movies.
I say sleazy thriller. Go in and
it is a sleazy thriller.
Yeah, expect a sleazy thriller.
Yeah, if you like Paul Verhoeven movies or Brian De Palma movies, this is like
Yeah.
in good company with that.
Verhoeven's an excellent pairing with this. Yes.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you for being like, hey, is anybody talking about Hannibal? And thank you for being on the defense with this movie with us. So we're not, sometimes it's interesting to have someone on that has a different opinion, but it's kind of nice when there's a movie that most people regard as not good. And we're all like, no, this movie's actually pretty cool. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having. Can I tell the Ridley Scott story just really, really quickly?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it'll be a good finish, I swear. So, I have a buddy I just met randomly who does some film stuff and has bummed around the industry over the years, and he probably won't hear this. And if he does, I can't imagine he'd be too upset. But he has an awesome Ridley Scott story. So he worked on the set of a commercial that Ridley Scott was shooting. I'm going to say this is probably early 2000s, so a little bit after this movie. That's what my guess. And he said that Ridley was a jerk, of course, and he said that Ridley and the DP were obsessing over something and just like we're totally immersed in this one shot or something. And Ridley told his assistant, and the assistant came over to my friend and said, because my friend was basically a gopher, and he said, Ridley wants some Starbucks. And they were shooting outside of London, and the drive to Starbucks was about 35, 40 minutes. Now,
Jeez.
my friend said, we got craft services right here. We got immaculate coffee, French press, delicious. It's like literally like 70, 80 feet away from him. He wants Starbucks, like Ridley wants Starbucks. So he's like, all right, whatever. So he gets in the car, drives about 30, 35 minutes, gets Starbucks, drives back, which I don't know how it's not going to be cold, and brings it in. And goes over there, and Ridley's assistant takes it and sits it down. Ridley and the DP are still fiddling with the thing. About a half hour later, she comes over and says, the Starbucks is cold. Ridley wants some new Starbucks, some fresh Starbucks. And the guy's like, are you for real, seriously? And you're like, yeah. And he's like, okay. So he got in the car, drove, got Starbucks, brought it back, put it down. Ridley still fiddling. DP got to try to figure something out, and the assistant comes back to my buddy and says, "Starbucks is cold. Can you go get Ridley some more Starbucks?" And he said, "No, I'm not going again. I'm not going." And he said, "Let me go ahead and show myself off the set because I know I'm fired." And that's fine, but this is ridiculous. I'm not going to do this. And he's getting ready to leave, and somebody comes over, and they're like, no, you have to wait and let Ridley fire you officially. So he had to sit around, and Ridley's got the cigar. He's like, are you sure you want to blow your shot in the industry? That's a horrible Ridley Scott impersonation. And he's like, man, yeah. He's like, dude, they've got awesome coffee over there. Are you... He's like, well, what I want is what I want. You all get out of here. So that's every time I watch a Ridley Scott movie now, I just think about behind the scenes. I'm like, does he have a Starbucks like right by him, like getting cold, and he's not paying any attention to it?
What if he hires one person on every production just to have them go get Starbucks and then get so fed up that he can like fire them personally? Like that's a part of the contract.
He hires them to fire them specifically.
Yeah.
You know,
makes him feel better.
It was probably already cold by the time it got there because of how long of a drive it was. And also, Ridley Scott is always making knocks about Americans and their taste in art. And for a very British astute filmmaker who's all about the art wanting a cup of Starbucks, dude.
I
Come
want
on.
Starbucks. I want Starbucks.
You can't
coffee.
get more American than that.
Yeah, I don't. It would be funny if he's like, I want McCafe coffee, so go to McDonald's and get the coffee.
That was a very caring thing to do.
Yep. Yeah, that's just dumb. But yeah, it tells you how some people are, and but good on your buddy for like just being like, no, I'm not doing that. That's stupid, and you know what? Fine.
I think you
It's not
just
worth
snap.
it.
You know, you either hang in there and hope that you're going to make it big, or you just like. And he's like, I have to keep my dignity. I'm out of here. You know.
Well,
so.
I don't know. They probably will still make excuses for Ridley Scott because of his age. But I think that type of behavior, even though it doesn't look like he screamed at him or said obscenities or anything, but I think that type of dictator behavior is going to the wayside. And that's a good thing because there are a lot of people who work on film and television sets and they're all important. It's not just the director and the writer or the actors. Everybody that works on there, to the person who probably made the much better coffee than what was at Starbucks.
All right. Well, Cody,
I'm not. Can I just say one more thing? And I'm not. I swear, guys, I'm not going to take over the show. But I will say, I heard from another buddy in the industry that everybody in Hollywood loved working with Tony Scott, and when they said Tony Scott was an angel and was the absolute opposite of Ridley. So, R.I.P. Tony. I mean, he made some
Yeah. I'll say it again, and I say it every time his name is brought up. He's an underrated director, and there would be no Michael Bay without Tony Scott. Michael Bay would not exist as a filmmaker without Tony Scott doing it first. What a modern American action movie looks like today, you can thank Tony Scott for it, for better or worse.
Yeah. Tarantino said it. He's like, you put on 5 seconds of a Tony Scott movie, you know it's Tony Scott.
Facts.
I'm finally going to shut up. I swear I have nothing else to say.
Besides,
Hannibal's awesome.
I was going to ask Cody what we have coming up here. Well, we got a show Saturday, I think.
We have a show Saturday. We're continuing our brunch series of the summer of '82. So we're talking the big one this weekend. We're talking E.T. the Extraterrestrial, the movie that ruled the box office. And then Sunday morning, we'll be back in the Coen brothers. We're going to be talking their Academy Award-winning film, No Country for Old Men.
I love that movie. Such a great
movie. Sometime in August, Kevin is joining us to talk Black Hawk Down.
Cool. Let's see. Next week, let's see. Will that be our birthday? No,
that is our birthday. Yeah, next week's our birthday
weekend. All right. Let's see. What were we talking? Do you have a movie picked out, Cody? Because we usually around our birthday every year we pick out. We did this last year. We each pick our favorite movie, and then that's what we talk about. So, what was yours, Cody?
Because I am highly anticipating Nope, and it does come out on my birthday. So I guess thank you, Jordan Peele. You made a movie for my birthday. I want to talk Get Out.
Nice. Yeah, that's going to be fun. I think I'm going to go with Big Trouble in Little China.
Yes.
So yeah, that's going to be my birthday movie this year. So
love it.
Happy birthday to us.
Yeah.
Next week.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barrett. 39, man. 39. Almost.
I wish I was 39.
So yeah, we got those coming up. Feel free to chime in and if you got any questions, So other than that, thank you, Mark, for coming on. Always a pleasure to talk movies, and it was definitely fun to talk Hannibal.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on. You're welcome anytime you want to talk something, and I hope if you are working for summer courses, I hope it's not a lot.
No, I'm kicking it, man. I just got this new house, so we're it's all home improvement around here. So yeah,
Well, Lindsay, thank you for joining
yeah.
us and come popping in and out when you could. I know you're a very busy mom.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Cody. I really appreciate it. Always a pleasure. So.
All right, we're going to call it. Mark, you have a great day. Enjoy the rest of it. Have a great weekend. Hopefully it's not scorched earth weather in Michigan.
We actually have overcast and drizzle.
Yeah, it's what, 95 instead of 100,000 today.
Right? Yeah. So we'll hit those. My phone says 72 right now outside. Which
Oh, well, that is a
says,
cold front for us.
Yeah, it says a high of 89, and after triple digits for the last week,
if you close your eyes, you can almost pretend it's autumn.
Yeah. Oh,
well, I've been having to take my dog out to walk in the morning because we can't do it in the afternoon. Just go to the bathroom, and like this, even in the mornings, it's been like, oh my god. Today, I was like, oh, it's not so bad.
Yeah, it's pleasant.
Your face didn't melt immediately upon exiting your home.
Yeah. All right, guys. I will see you Saturday.
All right. Same bat time, bat place, and bat channel there.
Yep, all that jazz. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you watch later, thank you. And if you haven't seen Hannibal or you haven't watched it in 20 years, I say give it a second chance.
Definitely.